Hello everyone, my name is Travis Tipton. This is PIDP 3351 Feedback Strategies, and this is my little report on assessment for, of, and as learning. We'll just pop that up right there. Before we go on here, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional, unceded, and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. So, one cannot think or even discuss adult education without the topic of self-evaluation coming to mind. This is because self-evaluation goes hand in hand with adult education. We all know about the different types of assessment as I have listed here. Assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. And I'm not going to read them all out, but how do we incorporate them all into our teaching and move towards more of an assessment as learning? Within andragogy, Malcolm Knowles proposed 6 assumptions of adult learners. In his 5th assumption, he describes that adults are driven by internal motivation instead of external. As I find myself on a more humanistic perspective when it comes to adult learning theories, I'm inclined to push this self-evaluation because as within this theory, the student or the learner is central. This is where assessment as learning comes into play. As an instructor being a facilitator of knowledge rather than the central focus, self-evaluation is therefore a tool to help ensure that students are the central figure. Again, this leans on the assumption that adults are driven by internal motivation. They want to perform well, and in order to do so, they must rely on themselves to assess their abilities, progress, and understanding of the learned material. The prospect of taking onus for one's learning is quite appealing. However, this does not mean I don't have my slide up. This does not mean the instructor is off the hook and is oblivious to what's going on in the classroom and in the student's learning situation. I would actually argue that a more detailed structure must be followed in order for students to be self-sufficient or audiodactics. I think I pronounced that right. Therefore, we must strike a balance between all the assessment styles. Myself coming from an industry that is very heavily regulated by Transport Canada and the federal government, there is very little room for us at my school to incorporate additional processes such as self-assessment. However, I feel it is very important for students to reflect on their journey. For in the end, a reflection of the pearls and pitfalls and the highs and lows of education is very important. To reflect on how one got to a certain point in time allows insight to who we are as learners and individuals. So, what exactly is self-assessment? How do we do it? As Fenwick and Parsons in their book Assessment of Learning say, they say that participants must be cautious. Participants may be cautious about self-assessment until they are sure that no one will trick them by administering some external examination or telling them that their criteria is wrong. Now, this stems from the fact that students in the North American style of education, where it's very indoctrinated with a master and commander type school structure, this is assessment of learning. We expect judgment in a pedagogical style and need our teachers and instructors to evaluate us. And this is foremost in our minds, which harkens back to our grade school days and follows us into post-secondary education. This assessment of learning is not to be eradicated, though. There's just we still are going to have to administer tests. We're still going to have to administer exams. But we have to add, it has to be balanced with the other assessment for learning and assessment as learning. One method for assessment for learning I would use, and I designed this for PID 3230, is what I call clear and brackish waters. So we have clear concept and brackish, more of a murky, concept. So for instance, in this case, after a lesson or project, I would have the student write down one thing that made sense or was interesting, and one thing that's still a little brackish and needs a little clarification. I would then break the students into groups and just discuss their various responses. I would then provide feedback or feed forward to each group to assess their understanding of the topics and perhaps point them in a different direction. But now this leads us to assessment as learning. As I mentioned, I believe it is very important for us to self-assess. Excuse me. The mode and method, though, may take some time to perfect. However, the ability to take control and take onus for one's learning is important for the development of adult learning. This puts the onus on the student's education to their own hands. This can be difficult to accomplish, though. They may struggle with the art of self-reflecting, or they may ask questions like, "Is it good enough? What my instructor think? Do I meet the Rubik specifications?" I would encourage them to ask these questions, and not only those, find ways to further their understanding of what self-assessment is. Different ways maybe to analyze their work, as well as partnerships, and maybe self-assess each other's. Now, again, Malcolm Knowles stated that adults are intrinsically motivated to learn. This motivation allows us to go beyond, as he quotes, what might be required by some agency or institution. This is where I believe the willingness to self-educate comes from our internal motivation to succeed in our own disciplines. But with this in mind, I'm definitely a fan of journal writing, personal reflective writings, and in some instances, case studies. I do feel that expressing oneself on paper is a great way to work out details and tie concepts together in an educational setting. There's a lot of times I wish, that I had done this when I was going through my own schooling. This is something I would, encourage with my students, and unfortunately, I didn't do that. However, at my school, again, as I mentioned, it's not part of our assessment process to do so. At BCIT, and many of our courses are part-time courses. However, I believe it can add some fulfillment to students' journey as they become mariners. I just think it's wise to do so. This would be especially true with the cadet program. In this program, they're there for 4 years, and they go through many courses and everything like that. And they even have ship placement, vessel placement sponsorship. So a self-assessment journal would help make their time at school more enjoyable and meaningful. Looking back at my own experience, looking back on one's experience, I should say, and what one did, what was wrong, what was right, is critical to the overall development of adult learners, as well as our understanding of the adult world. Overall, it's our desire to be independent, and it's achieved through self-reflection, and our drive for internal motivation is satiated. Anyways, here's my list of references here. And I'd like to thank you for watching this. I hope this was educational. And again, thank you very much. Look forward to some feedback.